Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to RLAfterShock, episode 5. It's been over a month. My name is Switchblade J. Joining me, as he always does, is Digital Bacon, and today we have a hell of a podcast planned for you. We're going to be taking you through all of the results of the last week of the RLCS and the RLRS. So, plenty of action has been going on. Rocket League, the Rocket Baguette Grand Prix as well. Loads of the news, mailbag, everything over the next hour and a half. So, once again, Digital Bacon, he's here with me. How you doing, bud?
Always doing good. I mean, it's been a bloody busy weekend, ain't it? Like,
Oh,
Epic
yeah.
going down before that, the Rocket Baguette Grand Prix, TCS on Thursday as well, which you're actually from Epic Land. It was the night before from me. So good stuff from them to allow you to borrow a room. And if you haven't noticed, I'm still getting myself in place. It's like been a mad rush here at the end, Jay, just to get things all sorted out, hasn't it?
Yeah, like I literally put the first draft of the show plan up on Saturday night. Usually I'm putting it up on like Tuesday, Wednesday night. Like, okay, we've got some things going on, so it's more been manic trying to plan things. We don't have a feature for you this weekend, unfortunately, but we've got plenty of action. So once again, make sure you keep in touch through all of the standard social media channels at RLAfterShock on Twitter, and of course join the Discord if you are live in the Twitch chat. Type !Discord !Twitter to follow those. Of course, if you're listening on the now brand new audio version of the podcast, which you can find via Spotify and Google Podcasts, as well as 5 other amazing platforms. And of course, those are all available in the show notes. That's a podcast thing as well. In case you're not watching, you can take the show with you live at anchor.fm/RLAftershock. So, let's go ahead and talk about the news this week, because a couple of stories did kind of break that we kind of were like, okay. And we'll start with this one because it kind of does continue off of what we were talking about last week with organization items, revenue share opportunities within the context of Rocket League. Pashi had this tweet which sort of pushes to the idea that maybe it's on the way. To quote from him directly, all these people going at Psyonix because of player revenue shared items. Psyonix isn't responding to it as well. Maybe there's a reason for it. Why aren't some pros saying anything about it? Which is a curious little bit. Initially, I was getting excited because I was like, oh, okay, this is actually really cool. Maybe there is something going on about it, because yeah, it's true. The pro players haven't said anything about the items in. But you take a look at the responses, particularly coming in from Remco and Cooksey, who are still critical about the way the Psyonix are going about it. It doesn't necessarily suggest in definition that that's what's coming to the scene.
So there were, I wouldn't say, rumors from trusted sources, let's go with that, Jay, about what, before last LAN, it would have been that essentially Psyonix were looking to put their org items in at this LAN. Can't remember if I said it last week, but it was basically they were going to do a trial run with the top 4 teams that make it through from each region, and then OCE as well, putting those in the game as sort of the LAN part of it. It's just with how quiet it's been, even up to this point, I still can't see it happening. We know, like, the reason I didn't want to ever bring it up is that Psyonix always seem to delay things a little bit more. Like, they, with the updates, oh, we plan it to come out next week, and then it gets pushed back an extra week behind. Because they do know that it's got to be in some, state to come out. If it's not ready to come out, don't put it out, it's just going to be bugged. We all know Psyonix do put out these updates and patches, but the next day they're always fixed.
Very slowly, I should add. Still salty from last week, in case you're not aware.
Yeah. But it's been in the works for a long time. It just feels like, it's the whole legality issues which they're using as their excuse, which is holding it up. But I don't know which side that legality is coming from. It always feels like it's Psyonix holding stuff up.
Yeah, it seems so. The reason why I kind of wanted to bring this to light is the fact that it's Pashi in particular, the one that seems to be tweeting it. And while it does seem to be like, okay, this is something that's notable, and obviously, it was last week.
BS, does he really?
That's Pashi doesn't really BS too much. But you sort of like that, how everything kind of kickstarted with that tweet from last week as well, that the players seem to know a little bit more about things. My main issue here is the fact that it seems to be also completely split, because while Pashi seems to be saying something, Remco is saying, quote, a humble brag about knowing in-game items are on the roadmap, or question mark. Every pro knows about it. Some orgs knew about it since early to mid 2017. Doesn't make a difference. It's the details that matter. And meanwhile, Cooks is turning around and saying, many of us are vocal about it. I don't know what you're talking about. We are gonna be all without orgs and nothing changes soon. So there's a split sort of seems like there's some people that are in the know, some people that are not in the know. Obviously, we're not in the know because we haven't heard Sweet FA
Yep.
about anything. I mean, I don't know what this really says about the state of Rocket League esports at the moment.
And on that sort of note, us being casters, it don't matter because we're more community casters than professionals, so we wouldn't know any more realistically than public. It's just, you know, us talking to players and that are in the know, of course, because we're mates with them. That's just the simple truth. And everyone sort of gossips and that sort of thing. Like, players are very much on the nose about this, so you know they know they're not allowed to say it, but you know, wink, nudge, say no more. It's pretty much that case. And like I said earlier, Pashi does not BS. What you see is what you get from him. And I can remember back in the early days of Rocket League, that was something that actually pissed off a lot of other players. They thought he was just a dick. But no, he's just got that mentality to win. And that's why you always see him say drop teammates to try and provide a better one. It's because he's being very cold, hard, and sort of, I want to say business-like about being a player. And you've got to admire that to a lot of degrees. So here he's saying the reason why we haven't said it is because Sonics is working on it. But the thing that's frustrating the other pros and such is because they don't have the patience or whatever. They don't have the clear sort of this is the set date. They haven't been told enough, essentially, or not been told clear enough, which is why pros as well are getting frustrated instead of just being like Pashy and just sort of going, it's coming, just allow it, it'll happen.
Yeah, well, something else I wanted to zone in on as well is particularly about Cooks' tweet, where he says particularly, quote, "We are all gonna be without orgs and nothing changes soon." And it was something that went up on the subreddit a little bit after Pashy made this tweet. It was someone saying, "Please tell me that the Psyonix are not gonna be trying to do deals with pro players rather than just completely outdoing the organizations." Now there has been some speculation about this. Gregan made a comment on that on that particular thread, just saying, you know, I don't think it's going to happen because of because of the way that they've sort of like they've used certain little memes in the scene, like Marky's eyebrows, for example. That eyebrows topper, you know, he hasn't gotten any revenue share for that. It was just a meme. You know, Psyonix have just put that in the game for shits and giggles, essentially. And it does, but I do want to like sort of like get your opinion on that, because I really think that if they do strike a deal with the players alone, it's gonna, I really think, harm the scene overall, because we do need some organizations to pay those players. I don't think Psyonix are making enough money to try and do that whole one scene system, at least not right now, you know.
I'm very vocal about how Psyonix run things and how it feels like they do anyway, because of course it's just speculation and opinion of stuff. Naturally, I feel a franchise system akin to how LCS works, a little bit like how Overwatch League works, would be best. So essentially, each team is given a base salary from Psyonix for a round number, $1,000 each month. That's how much they're paid. Then, of course, orgs buy in a spot, buy in that team, and then they can pay however much is agreed upon in their contract on top, of course. And then, you know, that also leads to sponsorship deals, whatever have you, you know, the marketing aspect, the actual org team aspect of it, instead of just literally being players. That would mean Psyonix would have, I don't want to say ownership of these players, but they have the core base level. They've got the foundation essentially locked in stone, and the players are more 50-50 between them and the orgs. That means stuff like Marky's eyebrows being in it makes sense there, because naturally Marky could have, if he was upset about it, I mean, he must have said, yep, you can do that, that's absolutely fine. But if in a legality sense, he could have gone, you're using my likeness, I'm going to sue you, because I don't expect that to ever happen, of course, but we've seen it in other areas, other industries where, say, a video game's used the likeness of a certain celebrity and then been sued for it. It happens. And that's why by playing it this way, it's sort of more secure. And I reckon with this whole team debacle at the moment, it'd be a lot more secure for Psyonix to play it that way as well.
I don't know, secure, but at what cost is my personal opinion. Because when you talk about franchising systems, I know that I've been pretty vocally against them. I don't mind them in an isolation. You know, like I don't have a problem, as much of a problem with the Gfinity Elite Series now as I did back in season 1, because there were some other reprehensible issues that kind of put a sour taste in my mouth. My problem is really with the franchising system for something like the World Championship. For my money, you want the world's best to be in it, and if you put something like franchising there, then there's a certain like old boys club going around where it's only those players and only those organizations and only those teams can ever compete. No one else can ever seem to break the mold, and I have a real big problem with that. I think that if a team's good enough, they should be able to prove their way up to the top over the course of 1 or 2 seasons to qualify for RLRS, go into the RLCS, etc. You know, maybe even add more steps to the ladder to make it thoroughly defined. I think that the thing that really needs to be done, and this is also something that's worked well in Counter-Strike, is just to have that extra revenue share opportunity within the context of RLCS. You know, one of the models that I've always liked to fit into is the ECS model. For those of you who don't know what ECS is, it's the Esports Championship Series. It's a Counter-Strike tournament run by Faceit. Always represent Faceit. I love that organization. And essentially you can qualify for that tournament, and if you qualify, you're entitled to buy like a share in the tournament itself. So that gives you all the regular revenue share opportunities that you would get from broadcasts. You'd get a cut of the value of the league, and you can sell that on. But you're also at risk of relegation at the same time. And if you get relegated, you have 2 more seasons to get back into that tournament, and then otherwise you have to sell it back to Faceit at the price it's worth of at the time of sale.
And of course, you can sell that at any time you want.
And you can sell that at any time. Yeah, I think a system like that might work well for Rocket League at the same time, because obviously this is the problem we're having right now, the financing side of Rocket League esports. I like the idea of maybe some sort of like half franchising, or again just get some sort of deal together about selling in-game items, because that I think is going to crack the most of the market, in my opinion.
Basically, it is just the biggest problem with Rocket League, I think, for us at the moment, is financial security for these teams, and that's the big crux of it, because, you know, the revenue share with org items, that's the result of financial stability. That's actually them making money from it. So that's what we want, but this is why we want it, essentially.
Pretty much. You know, obviously Rocket League still has a long way to go. As for the in-game items themselves and about revenue sharing, you know, it's a problem that still needs to be worked on. Obviously, we haven't heard anything official from Psyonix. In fact, the most official thing we've heard from them since the outfall of the debate from last week was literally Shice was talking about Asia, which is fun because I was talking about Asia on Monday as well. But that has nothing to do with anything in the context of this podcast. So we're just going to skip that particular one. But yeah, that's patchy on essentially the current status of Rocket League and the current status of revenue share items. Now let's talk about the status of another organization who we absolutely love here on the show. Yeah, that's appropriate. Just
the memes aren't even good. That's the problem. That's what hurts me deeply.
This isn't even going to be what gave me an aneurysm. This is going to be what gave me a cringe, because I laughed so hard at this fucking article that was posted by Octane.gg. Report: Unilad withdraw from the Gfinity Elite Series. Not many people in Rocket League like Gfinity. Like Unilad. A lot of people like Gfinity.
They like Gfinity, don't like Unilad.
Don't like Unilad, no. And this is just another chapter in the shit show that has been their entire esports operations playbook at the moment. Essentially, a couple of weeks ago, they went into administration, and essentially Unilad are set to withdraw from the Elite Series. The issues basically being that they have been unable to submit their rosters as of the roster deadline officially. Keep in mind as well, by the way, that all of this is just based off the report of that Duck put out on October 10th. Since then, I did speak to him, and he was talking about how some of this might not still be accurate, and there may have to be retractions issued. So we'll put that as a caveat in, as well as that also industry politics, maybe Gfinity. Yeah, go on.
Jay, it's administration, so that isn't they've got to close down whatever. What administration means in most legal senses are they're allowed to keep operating. They just got a certain window, a certain period where they've got to find a new buyer, a new owner, someone basically to cover their debts. In this case, it's £9 million. So if someone comes in the given amount of time from the banks, you know, that was agreed in court, covers that 9 million, Unilad just keeps operating as it is. Or Unilad can sell off the esports branch to some other place. So what we're saying here is that maybe they've had someone come in and make the recovery essentially, or the esports branch of Unilad, like the name itself, has been bought by a different company and, you know, traded off, sold, whatever. So they could still be here in the Gfinity Elite Series, but nothing's been said. And of course, the media day happened last Thursday, was it, or last Friday? It was sometime over the weekend, and Unilad weren't there.
Yeah, despite that though, Gfinity is still promoting Unilad as a member of the Elite
All the same
Series, but
teams.
then all the same teams are still there. So what the fuck is going on is the real question. And again, it is this issue about Unilad not being very committed to talking about their esports division. It seems like the esports division in general is just pretty laxed. Unilad don't really give a shit about Rocket League. They don't really give a shit about esports as a whole, to be honest. I'm just going to say that
It
of
was
my
FIFA.
personal opinion.
That was all they cared about in it.
Yeah, like you take a look at you take a look at at their social media page, which is fucking hilarious. It hasn't been active for like over a month. I don't think. The last time they tweeted out anything Elite Series based was back in July, and also on their Twitter page. And this is the part that fucking is the best part about it. You go to their Unilad Esports Twitter page. They don't even link you to a website which tells you more about the organization and their players. It links you to a fucking third-party merch store. I just, you very clearly do not give a shit.
It's what happens when companies jump on the bandwagon, the esports bandwagon, essentially. This Unilad was a Facebook social media sort of meme platform, and as I said, not that good memes.
Which somehow became a multi-million-pound company. How the fuck does our society get to that point?
Like, so they saw esports as a natural progression, like I said, mainly with FIFA, because their demographic likes FIFA as well. So they jumped on that, got into the Gfinity Elite Series by buying their way in, and didn't really do much with it. They're the sort of org which you don't like being in, purely because they're just there for name's sake. They're not actually progressing the esport. They're not actually helping the players at all. They're just there because they use it. I wouldn't even say for marketing, because they didn't really use it for marketing.
That's the thing. That's the thing about Rocket League in particular. That's the thing about Rocket League in particular. They don't give a shit about Rocket League. They're only in Rocket League because they have to fill a contractual obligation with Gfinity. The only three teams that I know that exist that they care about are Street Fighter, FIFA, and Call of Duty, because that's their core market. They're the lad, they're the laddie sort of thing. And do you know what lad culture is? Lad culture is some dude sitting down on his fucking PS4 going, yeah, all right, I'm gonna open some packs on FIFA. Yeah, oh, have I got Messi this week? Have I got a goal? Nah, I ain't got no goal. Oh shit, fuck this. Yo, mate, I'm gonna call you up. You wanna come play some Call of Duty with me? Yeah, all right, yeah, let's go get on some fucking headset. Let's play some shit esport game right here. We're gonna with a controller. How the fuck you play esports with a FIFA FPS with a controller? I'll never fucking know. But yeah, oh man, you're a shit teammate, mate. I'm gonna 1v1 you on fucking Street Fighter now. That's it. You're a piece of shit. You're the worst teammate in the world. Come on, let's fucking do it. Hey! Rocket League has no fucking place in that shit, right? Unilad don't give a fuck. They don't give a fuck, and therefore neither do I. So if this is the end of their esports operations and their operations within fucking Rocket League, good riddance. And again, it's another fucking page on the shit show that has been Unilad Esports, man. Like, holy shit.
That awkward moment when you still play Call of Duty with a controller, though. Not saying anything.
Not anymore. Black Ops 4 is out on PC and everyone's been playing Blackout, and there you go. Like, you can wipe the slate clean with that one. Love Call of Duty now.
I still find it weird because, of course, with that game, it was always it was back in the days where consoles were easier to play on, because it was like lock-on, essentially. With like, if you hovered your crosshairs over someone, it would look straight onto them. That's why I always found it easier to play a controller, because I'm trash otherwise.
The whole thing is that it just compresses the entire skill gap to this, basically. Yeah. There's not as much skill as playing something like Counter-Strike, which is why I don't think fucking Call of Duty could be taken seriously as a fucking esport back then. Nowadays, again, I'm hoping that changes with Blackout, but that's another conversation for another day. And a different podcast, yeah, of course. But just to confirm my point about the current situation, obviously Switch was drafted in as a player currently on his social media. He's still not confirmed for anything on Unilad. As far to my knowledge, there's been none of the subs have been reached out to.
Actually, question there: how are they drafted if Unilad's done nothing? So if Unilad doesn't have a team but they still draft players, is that because Gfinity picked them for them? Or is someone still working at Unilad? Like, how does that work, essentially,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. That's the problem right now, is that no one really knows what's going on with the Gfinity squad, because we don't actually have a proper fully defined squad. We don't seem to have any sort of information on what's going to happen to the subs, because they've been picked. Surely they've been picked. You know, it's official. It's out there. You know, there's social media postings about all those guys, but nothing has been done to deal with their involvement in the Elite Series. Obviously, no contracts have been signed. So, you know,
Just gonna say,
what's
though,
up with
the
this shit
final
show?
roster,
Is it Gfinity's problem, or what's going on?
I don't know, because the final roster was on the 9th of October, 5 p.m.
Yeah,
But
and they didn't submit to anything.
Well, no, there's nothing saying they have to publicly submit. Maybe it's a case of they're allowed to tell Gfinity, but not actually tell it publicly. Essentially, a bit like how, you know, with Envy, they did put in a roster, and it took them a while to announce it. And they've got sort of like they pretty much secured their academy team they had last season, which they're carrying over for this season, it would seem. And then, like we said, our speculation is that Envy's going to drop from EU, RL, and move over to NA. But again, different story, different day. But maybe Unilad have, because of this administration where nothing's set in stone, they put it sort of under the table so that if they don't get bought out and they have to drop from Gfinity Elite Series, they can just, you know, wipe it clean and just go, oh, we're going to have to play with 9 teams. And then that team just sort of quietly goes away, instead of them continuously putting everything publicly and then suddenly just being cut. Like, to me, that makes sense. I'm just saying, at least there's a sort of outside opinion to it.
I don't know, to be honest. Like, you know, if I understand, you know, you don't have to reveal your roster at the moment, but this also comes from Duck, who I know is a very reputable journalist, and I know what he does, and he wouldn't put this out because he spent like a good 2 sleepless nights trying to confirm all the information before it went to publish. So he's got sources on the inside. He knows sort of like what's going on. I don't think he'd publish this without any any doubt or backing. Again, it's just a case of what happens to that night, to that 10th spot, which is the new question at the moment. And I don't know what happens to it either. Again, do they just let it die out quietly? Do they try and get another team to buy in? I've heard rumors. Complete rumors. I don't actually know how much of this is true. I've heard rumors that they might bring Reason Gaming back.
Makes sense.
Which, you know, I know that Blanks is campaign to do that. That's for certain.
Well,
I fucking love it if they
can. Aren't they? Essentially,
yeah, they are owned by
company.
Gfinity. So if there was one team that they were gonna bring back, it would have to be Reason, because Prophecy is dead as a fucking dodo. Like, no one's touching that shit with a barge pole.
So what other choice do they have? Because essentially it's a filler team. That's not a bad thing to have if you're doing a franchise, like a smaller franchise sort of system like this. Having filler teams that, you know, you can quite easily bring up to keep that 10 team is actually quite a smart thing. I'm just going to say they do. And Reason's an org which everyone actually loves. Like you said, Prophecy is unfortunately sort of just withered away and is hiding.
I mean, you say corner, unfortunately, but... I say whatever. I mean, it's a team that I never gave a shit for before the Elite Series. It's a team nobody really gave a shit for before the Elite Series. Reason Gaming was a team. Yeah, it's just a name. I mean, Reason Gaming was one where people really wanted to see it come back, and maybe it might. Again, it's all rumors, it's all speculation. I'd love it if it happened, but we'll have to see as things play out. As for Unilad, though, even if they are going to somehow come back from the pits of hell and, you know, get into the Gfinity Elite Series for this last season, I think it will just be for this last season. I don't see them coming back next year. I don't see them coming back at all, if I'm going to be brutally honest. It's just been a car crash, dude. It's just been an absolute car crash.
Yeah, unfortunately, I see Trox in there. Bring back Leaf. Trox, if you can pay out that 10th spot, go do it, buddy.
I mean, does he have £100,000? Because that's fucking ridiculous.
The title of the Rocket League daddy, though, I will say. Like, pay your way into Gfinity. Right, I reckon we should go on to the next segment, eh?
Yes, we haven't got a feature for this week. Unfortunately, it has been a bit more of a quieter week for the Rocket League scene. Obviously, the main things that have happened have just been the tournaments, obviously the Unilad thing. Still waiting on Gfinity Elite Series to kick back up, and we're bringing you all the content as that comes. So we just got a few mailbag things. We're going to start with this one from Jar of Jam, because let's start things off with a laugh. He puts down, if a car wore pants, would it wear them like this or like this? I also see that Ben and his infinite wisdom brought our tags first thing. We'll do that in a minute. We'll just get the laughs out of the way. This is a very very
heatedly debated
heated discussion.
Yeah.
This is going to be absolutely pivotal to the discussion of Rocket League esports. So, Bacon, I'm going to start with you.
It's got to be left, right? If you say it's right, you're a degenerate, okay? Just straight up there. It's left.
Oh man. I don't know. See, this isn't something I think about on a daily basis.
The hat is on top. You don't wear a hat on your head and your pants on your back, do you? Come on, it's simple logic there. Wheels.
Well, I don't know.
Feet.
I don't know if you've got overalls. Technically, your pants are on your back as well.
Those are trousers, not overalls. It looks so wrong going over the spoiler as well. Like,
I think we need a third opinion on this, Ben. Let us know. Well, what do you think, left or right? The one on the left. All right. Well, there you go. That's how cars should wear pants then. On the bottom half of the actual car rather than the back.
It looks like a wide body kit in like some sort of tuner car. That's what trousers are in cars. Tuner kits. There we go.
There we go.
Bodywork.
Right, let's get on to some actual serious questions. This first one comes in from Tag Matter. Absolutely love Tag Matter. Thank you very much for contributing all you have with the podcast. He asks, what do you think the future of more unique events like League of Rockets, World Cup, and 12 Titans? I think League of Rockets obviously is a very, very different style of tournament organizer.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they do everything pre-recorded. They live stream it as like an actual live stream. But the main thing, of course, is that they don't do standard tournaments. They don't do 3v3s. They don't do organizations. They do mixed teams in national squads. Sorry.
I'd say show matches and show.
Yeah, show matches might be a pretty appropriate way to do it. A pretty appropriate way to describe it. And again, it kind of harkens back to the question we had a couple of weeks ago about where do you think the other community tournament or smaller community organizers would go. And I think that that's probably some more abstract scene of Rocket League. I'm probably doing more 1v1s or 2v2 stuff for their style. I think that, again, it's something that's like people like, yeah, well, let's do like a show match 1v1 tournament once a year. We'll do 12 Titans and we'll sponsor it on Psyonix's part. But that is I think is the future for those more abstract style of tournament organizers.
I know that there is an org in the works with a Euros, essentially like, with football, it's just with Rocket League. That's quite cool. I'd like to see that more with, around the world. It's quite hard with NA since, you've only really got 3 countries. It's always a problem with NA there, but maybe like doing a state-based one for them. But no, for us in Europe, a Euro sort of like a cup would be blooming awesome. Like we know from the Swiss scene, don't we, Jay, from TCS, that even they could put up a challenge against, let's say from England, you've got Devo, Bluey, and iIgnite. Actually, that'd be a darn good team. I'm just thinking that.
Yeah.
I'm whoever's doing Euros, hurry up! I want this now.
Do you know what? Do you know what would be fun? Do you know what would be fun? I think it would be really fun if like we took that whole like World Cup concept and brought it to someone like WESG, right? Because their whole shtick is national teams. So if you had like purely 3 players from UK, purely 3 players from France, purely 3 players from Switzerland and from Denmark and from the USA and from Canada. Like they already do that on a whole bunch of different esports. They do it in Dota 2, they do it in Vainglory, they're having Counter-Strike this year as well. And it's a yearly thing. It's like the World Cup of esports, not the World Championships, like not like RLCS. Obviously, it's based in China, so we're gonna have to try and we can crack that Asian market first, which hopefully, thanks to what Shice said, Shice recently said on Discord, hopefully that would be something really, really fun. As it stands right now, though, I think that those could be very, very good as sort of like side bits of the scene, My
only problem with that is unless it's done at an incredibly high level, it's all just going to be online tournaments for a little bit of money because sponsorship is what fuels, a tournament and that. And it's quite hard to do these one-off teams, get those sponsored and then try and get that to a LAN event, which is like the dream goal. So for the moment, I'm quite happy to keep it with online events and it's just more for fun. Essentially, but I would love one day for Rocket League to actually get to a proper European LAN. Let's just say in France, you've got the top 8 nations coming together from the whole Europe. That would just be awesome.
Yeah, well, those are all things we can dream about. I think the next thing to move on to is, by the way, like what is League of Rockets sort of like way into this? Again, we sort of like already know that their 12 Titans thing is going to be a show match style. But what about their World Cup? I mean, I think the problem with the World Cup last time is that it was all run online, if I recall correctly.
Yep.
So if you had international matches, like cross-regional, like NA to EU, then it had the same problems as something like the Ting Open did. Where it was like really fucking a poor ping to play on. So having all that stuff, like having that stuff there in play for the League of Rockets side, that's the main challenge I think they have to overcome to put something like the World Cup back on the map.
Yeah, and we saw them for the 12 Titans this season too anyway, fly out all the players to Scotland when it was a Glasgow Beyond gaming centre. Belong, sorry, not Beyond. Belong being a sort of like, imagine a little mini LAN environment, like instead of bring your own PC, they've got it all set up there and it's owned by like GameStop in America, whatever have you in that. So yeah, that was really cool, and of course they got the sponsorship from them to do that. But if you had, say, top 4 teams get through, like from each region, so let's say America, Europe, Asia, and then Oceania, sort of that sort of region, maybe make 2 from Europe or whatever to make it viable, and then 1 from either Asia and Oceania, because money's a thing, and then getting 12 players out to somewhere in Europe to do that sort of final stage, and make it, I don't know, you do all these little bits from each area and then a group stage, like a double round robin to do the seeding for a final on the last day, like a single elim. That could be quite cool.
Yeah, and it'd be quite nice if we can do that again. Yeah, we'll see if we can do that. But for now, that's the League of Rockets out of the way. Our last question of the day comes in from Dexter Fetster. Talks about pretty much all the regions, essentially. He's talking about, is there room with the South America, CIS, or Asia regions finally included for Rocket League's equivalent of a WTI? Maybe the same question, but with additional regions. Should the LAN finals format be changed, and how? We've already talked about in the past how we think it's very important to get some of these regions involved. South America is great. I just think that CIS and Asia are going to be more valuable overall. I think that when we do include those sort of regions, it'll be nice to get like leagues going on for all of those sides, and to also have a way for each region to make their way into the RLCS. So here's how I would do it. We set up our league play system the way that we have it right now, except obviously with a few refinements, improvements, maybe adding a few more teams, maybe making it double round robin, guys. But yeah, we do it that way, and then we have the top 4 teams from each region. So you have a top 4 from EU, a top 4 from America, which also includes a little bit of South America as well, sort of like mixed in. We have a top 4 from OCE, and we have a top 4 from Australasia, and then we have a top 4. Sorry, I fucked this up. Top 4 from EU, top 4 from EU and CIS, top 4 from North America, top 4 from South America, and top 4 from Australasia. So Asia and Australia and New Zealand, etc. We have 16 teams at the grand finals. Then we do GSL system for groups of 4, so 4 groups of 4. Then the top 2 of each of those groups make it out to the top 8, and then we have a maybe double elimination bracket to close out the playoff stage. And those will all be that double elimination playoff will be on the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of the World Championships. The group stage will be during the week itself. So it's a very, very similar system to how we used to run the majors in Counter-Strike, for example, because that's how a lot of big tournaments in Counter-Strike are run. DreamHack, Masters are always run like that. So that's the way that I would do it to try and include all of the regions.
So for me, the way I would like it to be done would be having 4 EU, 4 NA, as it is now, the 2 from OCE, and then say that makes up 10 teams. Let's make it up to 12, with like 2 extra spots being rest of the world spots. So you would have Asia, South America, OCE, whatever, being invited, like say from each region, you'd get top 8 players to come to a very special one-off event, which is near enough focusing on the rest of the world, with the top 2 teams from that going through to the final world stage being RLCS. So near enough, you've got all this little hodgepodge of teams that you probably wouldn't have even seen, maybe not even following, but getting introduced to, and then they sort of get those last 2 spots between them. So it's like an extra stage they've got to earn, but it gives South America a chance, Asia a chance, and then maybe even you could give 2 spots out of those 8 qualifying teams to OCE for like a double bite of the cherry, because of course there's a lot of ability in OCE, but of course only 2 teams from OCE can get through, unlike EU or NA, which have 4 each. So it could be quite cool there.
Yeah, but I think it's important to get parity going as well. If you want to include everyone in the RLCS system, I think you have to go all the way.
Yeah.
You know, that's what ESL have done recently with the Pro League system. They used to have it EU and NA only. Now they've gone and done like micro leagues for all the different like sub regions. So we've got the Brazil region, the South America region, and then we've got the CIS side of things, which has like some of the smaller teams. Then they go to Asia. There's a China one, a Southeast Asia, an East Asia, Australia and New Zealand, and all these different sub regions come together. And at the finals of Pro League, we have like fucking 28 teams or something like that. Some stupid number, all playing in this one big tournament, and I think this sort of like something like that would work well for RLCS. I think it is an esport that can reach an international player base. And you sort of like you ask, is there room with the extra regions? I think there's tons of room. I think it's almost a necessity that we get.
Yes, there's up to 16 teams. 16 for a World Finals is the max number of teams. We're only at 10 at the moment, so there's definitely room to grow into, isn't there?
Yeah, 100%. You know, I certainly think that's good. It's not even just a room case. It's a necessity thing. There is so much that we need to do to get Rocket League esports really alive and kicking. I think my Discord has crashed. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're fine.
I can't hear you. Oh no, I can hear you now. That's not a good thing. I thought for a second that was not a good thing, but the Discord just kind of having a hiccup for a moment. But it's fine. Yeah, and as I was saying, there's room. There's plenty of room. It's necessary to have.
There needs to be growth. We know South America's coming sometime next year. I just hope at the same time they do include Asia. You know, like let's just make it up to 12 teams instead of 10 or 14, whatever. Add in 2 from South America and 2 from Asia. Personally, looking at it, I think Asia is actually at a higher level than South America, but I would say I'm a little bit biased or whatever because I've watched more of Asia than South America. So I'm going to completely come out and say I'm probably not the best one to go on the opinion there, because South America's a horrible time zone compared to us, isn't it?
It's like North America. Why do you think we do EU AfterShock and not NA AfterShock? Yeah, but I agree with you there as well. I haven't watched much of Asia myself, but just knowing just the general culture of Asian esports, it's something that has so much.
I've followed it for ages, and
there's so much potential for Asia to be to be a top team in the international space. I'd love to see an Asia Pro League again. I'd love to see it go to an international stage. I'd love to see it to be included in the RLCS, because again, you know, Asians, Koreans, Chinese, they all work extremely hard at esports because it's so deeply embedded in their culture. Like, it's something you can't afford to miss out on if you're Rocket League. So again, hope that comes to more fruition. I hope that Shice really does put some good work behind it. I trust Shice to put some good work behind it, since he's come out and said that it's not his empty words. So yeah, here's to Asia doing more in the near future. But obviously we're not doing Asia on this podcast. We're an EU specific podcast. So let's talk about some EU tournaments, I think. And let's start with the Grand Prix. Because we've cut our 32 teams down to just 16. We're not going to focus on the tiebreakers for this one because those haven't happened, and as far to my knowledge, they're probably going to be happening off stream.
They happen off stream, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the matches that we saw and the matches that and the groups that we saw in round 1 of the Grand Prix. So to run through the list very, very quickly, we've had Savage, WLF, XL, Unspecified, Copenhagen Flames, Rescue Wales, Team Secret, Bolo, Natural Babies, 3 Cars, Nordavind, Honeyest to be, Red Reserve, AS Monaco Esports, Schmooky, and Method as the teams that have made it out of the group stage, or the first group stage. Any major shockers here? I mean, personally, I think that taking a look at this, you know, it is relatively the expected results for the most part. All these brackets seem to be seeded relatively easily. The only major team I can think of that went out and I can that have really been notable is the first picks. But even then, they had a pretty hard group to get out of.
Actually, no, I'm going to say otherwise. Unspecified, a great team to see come through. But I was expecting with my boys to take that spot and pull 2 alongside XL. Unspecified being an awesome one to come around, because that's been an org that's been, a player sort of org that's been around for ages. That team since the days of, like, you know, Radio, Mervin, I think it was Data as well alongside him. So Mervin's still just keeping with his team, keeping that going. So that's cool. But unfortunately, with my boys out, Epsilon, Can you remember? We were expecting them with the
Oh
qualifiers.
shit! I completely forgot about Epsilon.
Bilbo
Sorry, they haven't actually done
reborn
anything
that
significant, so that's why I completely
Yeah.
forgot they were in the tournament, unfortunately. But
They
yeah, no,
plummeted out
they
in
should
pool
have.
three.
Yeah, they should have definitely made it out of Pool 3 because if I recall correctly, Pool 3 wasn't even that difficult. They had Copenhagen Flames, Exalti. Yeah, they should have been able to beat Exalti. How did Exalti manage to beat them?
Well, the problem was that Rescue Wales and Exalti turned up on the day. They were very close against Copenhagen Flames and very, very close against Exalti. But yeah, unfortunately, Epsilon just probably wasn't ready for that level, which is a little bit weird in contrast because from Pool 4, Team Secret's won. Team Secret got through a breeze. We expected that. But I was expecting Pim Pam Truki to go through the Spanish squad with like Mark Bay and that. And they just plummeted to Bolo, which I honestly couldn't even tell you who's on that team. Like, it's just slipped my mind.
Magu, Lethal Kale, and Mercy, which fair play to
So
Magu.
that's a good
Lethal Kale and Mercy, I've not heard of them.
But it's not the same level as like Mark Bay and Zedo and that. So Pim Pam dropping there. That's a surprise to me. Pool 5, where you had first picks drop out. They lost to Nachtal Babies. Nachtal Babies are a good team, but not of that same level as first picks. And 3 cars having to make it through in the lower bracket. That's all just down to Nachtal Babies turning up on the day.
Yeah, and Nachtal Babies, honestly, hang on, let me just bring them up real quick. Yeah, Nachtal Babies, really the only real known element for me is Nachtal. I haven't really heard of the other 2 guys. I mean, I don't follow the Spanish scene so closely. I know that Carlos has his own Wikipedia page, but he hasn't really had any major any major sort of involvement other than being a part of the E-Monkeys. So there are a few hidden talents in the EU scene that we haven't even known about just yet. And we're supposed to be the experts here, Bacon. We do community and high-level stuff. So
because the Spanish and French teams keep to themselves, so we don't know much about them unless it comes to the Colosseum or the play and that, because otherwise they stay pretty quiet. Like E-Monkeys, you'll see them maybe once a month show up for a rival weekly cup or whatever. Otherwise, they do their own thing, and it's that sort of like I don't want to say segregation because it's just them choosing to stick to themselves, but it's like a weird disjointed, and we don't always know what's going on in Spain or France because they've got their own stuff going on, which is separate to the rest of the EU.
Yeah, and again, it's sort of like harkens back to that point about WESG. I think that if they actually end up going for a national tournament, it would like, holy shit, Spain and France are just going to absolutely blow everyone out the fucking water. So, there's a lot of hidden talent here. And again, as you say, there are a few different ones. I mean, just for me personally, First Picks is the most notable one because they are a really, really good roster. I know they're a mix. I know they're not going to put their full time behind this because they are going to be doing some stuff with the Gfinity Elite Series teams. But Junior, Breezy, and Andon, like, they were one of my standout ones. I certainly would have picked them to move forward from Pool 5, you know.
A big thing we said as well, which could be a little bit of a hurtful thing, is I think it was Junior afterwards tweeted that he's not going to be playing in any of the other monthlies, or that team's basically just they formed together for that one cup. But one thing we don't know, even us as casters and organizers, we're not too clear on whether these teams have to stick together for the rest of the monthlies. Because from my reading of the rules, if you make it into the points, into the top 32, you then have to stick with that team for the rest of the monthlies in the Renegade Cup. Now, what happens there? You know, it's like, it's a whole different change. Like, I get the idea of why Sonics put it that way, because it means these teams have to grow together and, stick together, which has always been a massive problem for Rocket League, is players just sort of being flaky and going to each other and sort of making up these new teams. But that sort of bigger change without being massively emphasized could hurt these teams, which are now locked together and they might not feel that comfortable.
Yeah, especially with the mixed teams of the likes of the First Picks, they're not official. They're not going to be staying together for very long at all. I don't even imagine that they'll be staying together, as you say. Probably not going to be staying together for the next monthly. So it's up to Breezy and Andam, I think, if they want to continue to try and compete in the monthlies. That being said, though, can they even split up and join other rosters if they're within the points?
Because that's the point. They've got seeding points towards the Renegade Cup finals. So by them joining other rosters, it skews it all weird and wonky, So, like I said, the way I read the rules is that they've got to stick together essentially for the rest of the monthlies. If I'm wrong, I'm actually happy for that, because it's something that needs to sort of be changed. Maybe give that allowance for this first one going into the second, and then make it a rule from the second for the second, third, and fourth one. But here, I think that's something which the players didn't know was a rule.
I mean, I hope they did, to be honest, because it's supposed to be pretty well known. Obviously, no, I think it was one of the most publicized things about how the rosters need to stick together.
When do players read rules? We know this.
Well, if you're a player and you're not reading the rules, you fucking should, because you can get really fucking screwed up by that if you're not careful. Just take for example the flip side thing back in, was it season 3 or season 2? I can't remember which season particularly, the one where like the rules were a bit misconstrued and they had to like sort of throw up a bit of a complaint because Psyonix sort of interpreted them the wrong way. You don't know what I'm talking about, right?
Idea. No, I don't know at all. But I know the rule where essentially back during the change between season 1 and season 2, it was thought that Flipside wanted to get, I think it was Kronovi onto their roster to replace Mike. But they weren't
I'm not talking about
EU.
I'm not talking about roster change. I'm talking about general rules as a whole. Because I remember there was something about tiebreakers and Flipside like had to throw up a social media thing for. I can't remember if it was season 2 or season 3. We'll do some research later about it. But regardless, unfortunately, if the rules are in place, then that does mean it sticks in place, because you can't change them now after the tournament started. You got to do the next Renegade Cup. You can't, and obviously we're well into the Renegade Cup right now, so we can't do anything about it. For first picks, it is a bit of a disappointment. Again, I don't think they're too fussed about it, because they are supposed to, they're good players and they've got their teams established already. This is just like a side thing to compete in stuff like the weeklies and the monthlies.
Yeah, because that whole idea of them being first picks was that they're the first picks for the Gfinity Elite Series. That's where the name comes from. Then naturally, I would say RLCS, RLRS sub players already of that level, and arguably already an RLRS player, because last season being on Triple Trouble, and this season unfortunately being dropped for speed. But I still think he's a seriously underrated player. It's just, yeah, they aren't looking to stick together. This was just them doing the monthly and having a bit of fun. And it might not work out for them if these rules do apply. They might just have to stick together, and who knows? You could have just somehow have the birth of a brilliant team if they do stick together. But if they're this flaky, it's probably not a good sign for that, is it?
Yeah, definitely not. But yeah, life's life. That's how it goes. Right. That's round 1 over. We have got our brackets released for round 2 of the Renegade Cup, and you can find them right now on your screens. Moving from 8 groups to 4, so you can sort of like see a general overview of how they've been drawn. For Pool 1, we've got Savage versus Bolo and XL versus Rescue Wales as our opening 2 matches. For Pool 2, we've got Red Reserve versus On Used to Be and Schmooky versus 3 Cars as our opening matches of that one. Pool 3, and this is my favorite one, Copenhagen Flames versus Unspecified and Secret versus WLF. And Pool for Natchatal Babies versus Method, Nordavin versus AS Monaco Esports. Which one of these groups stands out to you first?
For me, it's going to be Pool 4. That's what I'm going with, is the closest group, because we've seen Natchatal Babies on the day can really cause upsets. Method, Nordavin, and AS Monaco are nuts teams. So Pool 4 is going to be the one I watch closely.
For me, it's going to be Pool 3, actually, because for me, there's 3 teams that could potentially make it out of this one. Secret, WLF, and Copenhagen Flames. Secret probably should breeze through pretty easily. It's really down to WLF and Copenhagen Flames for me, because obviously Copenhagen Flames had a bit of a shit season, unfortunately finishing 0-7. The future of that roster is still in question, and we're going to talk about that later on when we come to our RLRS speaking.
I hope they stay together.
Well, again, we'll talk about that more in detail in a minute. But WLF as well, they've been pretty good throughout this throughout the course of the Grand Prix so far. So against Copenhagen Flames, who could be a step up, but also might not be at the same time, there's some question marks thrown into the mix. I think that one might end up being the decider match of this group.
I reckon that will be a decided match, but I expect Copenhagen Flames to come out. I think Secret are going to walk that group. We know how good they are, how close they were to making the promotion sort of bit in RLRS. But yeah, Secret should walk that group, I think.
All right. Fair enough.
Let me just point out as well, the one thing I find funny is that both me and you are commentating over Pools 1 and 2 on the Wednesday. The ones we're most excited about
are Pools 3 and 4 on the Thursday.
Commentate on it.
Yeah. That's I feel like Rocket Baguette are punishing us for working for TCS at the same time. So damn you, Boyan. But quick predictions on who we think is going to make it out of each pool. Obviously, you've already talked about that secret in WLF for the secret in the Copenhagen Flames pool 3. But what about pools 1, 2, and 4?
So pools 1, I reckon it's going to be Savage and XL. Pool 2, Red Reserve, 3 cars. Pool 3, Copenhagen Flames and Secret, like I said. And pool 4, Method, Nordavind. We're just favouring strongest teams. It's straight down on paper. Nordavind looked really good. It was just like, at the moment, it's so hard in the RLRS, which, you base most of it off when they've got the other 4 great teams, Method, Secret. Oh, look at that. It's Savage as well. And Red Reserve in the upper brackets, which have just been dominating. So Nordavind, I reckon in pool 4, they've got the hardest pool out of all of them because of the diversity of skill, but they should be able to do it.
Yeah, I'd respect that. Again, I think the main problem for me is WLF versus Copenhagen Flames, but we'll find that out, of course, on Thursday. On Wednesday, as Bacon said, me and you are going to be both of us are going to be going through pools 1 and 2. So make sure you go ahead and tune into that at twitch.tv/ I was going to say Rival Esports Rewind Gaming. Excuse me for that one. But yeah, that is the Rocket Baguette Grand Prix. Now let's move into the RLRS because obviously the last week of league play has come and gone, and we have the 4 teams that will be moving, the 2 teams that will be moving forward to the promotion playoffs, and of course the 4 teams that will stay in the league system. So Savage and Red Reserve 6-1 in the season are going on to the promotion playoffs to try their chance at the RLCS. Method and Team Secret will be sticking around for 3rd and 4th place. I'm quite happy for Method actually because they kind of had a couple of issues. I haven't actually noted this down, but regardless, quite happy for Method. And I know that they had a couple of issues staying in the RLRS last season. Great to see that Rix Ronde and Burrito B have found like a new sort of a new system that kind of works out for them for this for the league as a whole.
You're saying quite happy for Method. Nothing against Savage, but I was there like on the bench going, please lose Savage, just because it's like my 2 favorite teams are there, Red Reserve and Method. Naturally, I was there like, Savage, lose. Nothing against you, lads, but it's just because I wanted those 2 in the playoffs. It's what being a fan is, guys. So Method sticking around, happy days, essentially. They've got a good track record. And who knows, maybe next season they can crack it. Solid spot for them at the moment, though.
Yeah, another season that probably a bit overdue to crack it, however, is Secret. And again, I'm still heartbroken about this. Obviously, they kind of relied on not Copenhagen. Was it Copenhagen Flames or Nordavind? I can't remember which team, but one of the teams had to win a series or 2 to give Secret the chance.
The problem was that Method had Copenhagen Flames at the start. So Secret relied upon Copenhagen Flames beating Method so that, they could then take the 3rd spot, essentially. And then one of the other 2 losing with a good sort of like deficit in games to be able to snatch one of the top 2 spots. They were the unlikely ones to do it because of that game differential, Method being 2 games ahead, essentially, at that point. Yeah. So Secret, it was like that tweet last week where Secret, they're like, yeah, we haven't got it because they knew Method were more likely for that upset than they were. And Savage and Red Reserve were pretty much solid because this week they had, I wouldn't say easy opponents. Red Reserve had Copenhagen Flames, Savage had Clappers, but they were lower half teams.
Yeah, and again, it is just more sad, heartbreaking for Secret because, as Talata pointed out, it took them literally 2 days to ruin a whole season of league play. And obviously, to speak, volumes for the format. But I'm also going to ask, is there something more to take away from this? Because everyone kind of expects at this point the Secret will be able to make it out of the RLRS and into the RLCS at some point within the next season or so. But they've been trying at this for a little bit of time now, and they haven't quite been able to break it. And I kind of want to suggest there's something more going on to this whole situation than just the format problems.
I don't know. Secret on paper is a good team. They can take wins, like we've seen from the Grand Prix. It just comes down to today. We'll talk about this with RLCS later in PSG, but teams can be not only good on certain days, in form, they can also have NAF days. Those 2 losses coming from NAF days, of course, for Team Secret. It is just the nature of it. So I say it comes down to more the format. One, I don't like that RLRS is just 8 teams as well because, you're losing half of the teams straight away from it, and there's no sort of redemption from that bottom half to stay up like the RLCS. I would, if Sonics are dedicated to keeping 8 teams in RLCS, I still want RLRS anyway to move to 10, 12 teams, purely so that there's more teams able to stay at that top level. And I'm also a big fan of automatic promotion for like first or second place, and then you get playoffs going after that. It shouldn't be playoffs for the bottom teams. This is my biggest thing of Savage and Red Reserve coming in that top 2 spot should, in my mind, be automatically promoted. The same with the bottom half of RLCS. It's then the teams after that which should have to work to get up, and they're going up against strong teams which they should have less of a chance of beating. So they've got to play on form that day.
Yeah, and it is an overall commentary on how the RLCS needs to be structured a little bit more. They need I think they need more teams in. Yeah, it needs to evolve. We need more teams, I think, on both the RLCS and the RLRS levels. I think there needs to be more room for movement. So as you say, maybe the top 1 gets promoted, and then the top 2 and 3 get the chance to play for the top. The second to last and third to last team in the RLCS. There's obviously a massive overhaul that needs to be done. Another thing that Sarnix kind of needs to do sooner rather than later. For Secret, it's just another case that they just kind of missed the mark a little bit further, just because of these problems that have cropped up. And for them, you got to ask, when is the train going to start slowing down? Obviously, I know that they recently just brought Freaky in, and he's been a great fit within the context of the team.
I don't think they're slowing down anytime soon, dude. I think for them, they're pretty stable. They'll stay in RLRS. I'd imagine they'll stay in RLRS next season. I don't see them slowing down anytime soon, because this is them at a constant pace. They're not, dropping off. They're just moving. I did like, a straight line. They're progressing with everyone else at the same point. They're just that little step ahead, naturally, because of their skill. I don't see them, however, doing, an upset and improving more than their competition, if that makes any sense. So I personally don't think Secret will be a team to topple RLCS teams. I don't believe that, but I think they're always going to be a team that's on that sort of like verge between RLCS and RLRS. Personally, for me, what I'd love in this situation is just go, okay, fuck it all. Savage, Red Reserve, you're in RLCS next season. The promotion playoffs now is between the bottom 2, Complexity and Fnatic, and Method Secret. So that next season, we've got 10 teams in RLCS, and then whoever drops down, that's fine. Nordvin, XL, Clappers, and Copenhagen Flames, your spot is secure for next season, and we're going to get in 4 new teams. I just love them to suddenly go, let's just throw everything out the window. We might upset some people because it might seem unfair or whatever, but what we're trying to do is just expand it in one go, and we've got to do it now, because really it does need to change now, I reckon, the format.
Yeah, and this next season is pretty much going to be the season where it needs to happen. Like,
if it doesn't happen at the end of next season, then I'm going to be incredibly worried.
Yeah, vice versa as well. But yeah, going from worry to the other end of the spectrum, success. Obviously, Savage and Red Reserve making it forward. They were the top 2 teams. Red Reserve making good on the 2 seasons that they've been in the RLRS. Obviously, a bit of a nice storyline for these guys, because they lost one organization thanks to Unilad, and then they come back in. I had to slide that BM in there at some point. But come back in. They've signed to Red Reserve, and they've just sort of been smashing it out the park every single week, it seems. Only lost one of their games alongside Savage.
Red Reserve that week, they sort of went really sluggish, didn't they? But they still won both games. They were 3-2 games, if I remember right. So they joined Red Reserve and then had a really off week, but it was an off week which they still won, which it just shows that caliber that Triple Trouble, now Red Reserve, are, that even if they're not on form, they're still a winning team, which shows for me great signs. And I reckon Red Reserve, out of those 2 teams, out of Savage and Red Reserve, I think Red Reserve have the better chances to make RLCS.
Yeah, for certain. I mean, I think they certainly feel more like a team. Just talking of Savage as well, they I think they're the only team so far that I think have qualified for the RL, off the top of my head, qualified for the RLRS, and then in the same season made it through to the promotion playoffs. No. Hang on, I gotta verify this real quick. Fnatic, yeah, sorry, Fnatic are the other one. And if I recall correctly, Fnatic were also the ones also made them promoted up to the RLCS
They swapped with Secret, I think it was, because Secret
Yeah.
were the very last team to ever make it directly into RLCS, alongside Frontline, which is now PSG. If you remember that in the old days, of course. And was that season 4? I think it was. But yeah, Secret went down, Fnatic moved up. That was the swap over, essentially.
Yeah, my bad. Then I was making a fuck up. I was being an idiot as usual. But
thank God my memory sticks.
yeah, I know, mate. Yeah, what do I want to do without you? I'd be a shit host, and this would be a shit podcast. But yeah, no, Red Reserve doing really, really good, and Savage also doing really well. But I do agree that I think Red Reserve have a better chance to make it above Savage, because Savage certainly have a lot of the building blocks because they're already already former RLCS players. For me, one of the points of contention, I don't know what it is. It just feels like that there's a little bit too much shooting power. Like Bluey and Alpha in particular sort of like seem they're very, very offensive styles. And I could see that being exploited relatively well.
And don't include Debo in with the aggressive power. Come on. It's
I'm
basically
sorry.
a team of 3 strikers. That is what Savage feels.
See,
so...
I'm not sure I count Bluey, Devo as a fucking striker because he was the problem as part of his last roster.
That's going to be a different case for a different day. That could be like a case study in like just Devo essentially and how that roster, because it's one thing a bit like we were saying with Mets and Norris last week of when he was playing with Complexity, he had to play a lot more defensively and he wasn't that's not how he wanted to play. Go over to Weedham Girls and you've seen him step it up in attack and he's playing the way he wants to, and now Weedham Girls have been flourishing because of it. Essentially they are looking beautiful at the moment. It's the same thing for Devo here. He's now going more into attack and he's enjoying himself. The problem is the difference in opposition they're going up against. Being all out Savage and in attack is okay in RLRS, but when you go up against RLCS teams, which can handle that and then, turn it around, it's going to be a different case.
Yeah, and one of the scary trends you take a look at Savage over the course of this season is the amount of goals they've actually let in. Even on games that they've won, they've usually been within 1 or within 2 goals. And yeah, they've got the striking power to drive it home against the RLRS teams. When it comes to RLCS, though, they're going to have the defensive game in play. And you're not going to... And when they can get their defensive game in play and turn it into an offensive game, that's when Savage are going to struggle, I think, the most. And that's why I don't think they'll really make it through in the next one. I don't think they're going to make it to the promotion playoffs. I think that they're going to really, really struggle against the teams that they're going to be up against, especially if they draw against Red Reserve. If they end up losing, if both teams end up losing their opening matches, then I feel like there's going to be some major problems against that team. And I don't know if has it been drawn the promotion playoffs actually. Let me see if I can.
So Fnatic versus Red Reserve for the first semi, Complexity versus Savage. Now, I don't know how any of these teams were not doing pick'ems, but out of those 4 teams, the ones that I expect to go up into RLCS is Red Reserve and Complexity. Complexity looking very good in that last week. We said a little too late, but they finally started clicking. Fnatic are in this weird, awkward ground, and I just don't think they're as good as Red Reserve. Like we said, Savage, the other 3 can handle, and they can fight off that attack and then go in for the counter and then get those goals. It's just basically because of play styles here that's going to make up between these 4 teams.
Yeah, and I think even against Complexity, Savage might end up struggling a little bit in that series. Well, they've not been amazing on the offensive side. I think the defensive still is kind of capable. I think that Complexity can still have a decent shout at just defending against Savage's all-out attack. And again, that's where the things get scary for Savage. And as you say, I think that probably that's the best prediction, Red Reserve and Complexity to move in through on the promotion playoffs. We weren't planning to do any of the promotion predictions, but since we're on that topic,
yeah. So for this, like you were saying there, Complexity, their biggest strength against Savage is that they're a very calm team. They're veteran players, essentially. Savage, that attack works against these RLRS teams because they're not as experienced, or, they still get jitters. They still get nerves after all its attacks. They make these mistakes. Complexity, we saw it in that game against Mouse Sports where Mouse were just going all out attack essentially in them. Yes, it weren't making the mark, but Complexity weren't really making mistakes essentially in defense. They're making mistakes in attack, yes, but in their defense they were saving everything, and that is the big difference. And this is my big focus of why Savage I don't think will make it into RLCS. They've got to work on that defense because they cannot be a one-sided team here.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you talk about 3 strikers. That's where issues really crop up in that particular state. But again, moving back to the other end of the spectrum, unfortunately, 4 teams were eliminated this season. Nordavind, XL, the Clappers, and Copenhagen Flames all unfortunately had pretty poor seasons. Not. I mean, it's
So
variatingly poor. For certain, you could say the same. You could say that the case for Copenhagen Flames and the Clappers, because Copenhagen Flames went 0-7, the Clappers went 1-6. XL and Nordavind sort of picked things up towards the end, I believe. XL especially sort of like had the most improvement, I think, out of anyone in this entire season. I think the problem
Nordavind
really
were pretty
is
much stable. They got their wins where Mad Nordavind beating out XL, Copenhagen Flames, and I do believe, the Clappers, that was their 3 wins. So pretty much on paper, they got their wins where they should have. XL got their wins against Copenhagen Flames and the Clappers, if I'm right. Yeah. So again, they're on paper, but XL stepped it up at the end. At the very start of the season, they weren't there. And it's, again, I reckon, because they came into the season not really caring. My biggest problem with XL, and I said it at the start, was that they seem like a team that just don't care. They don't worry about winning that. And that's what drives the team to win. Is because they want to win, so they're going to win. XL just seemed to be a bit bored. They finally picked up, put the work in. They looked a lot better. But when you come down to a league like this, single round robin as well, it's quite hard to say, like, oh, they didn't perform well. It's just the variance of skills. If you were to see Savage come out at the bottom of the table, that's when I can say you can justify saying Savage played bad this season. Nope, Savage did what they did. Red Reserve played as they did. Method, Secret played as we expect them. This is pretty much the results as we expect them. Albeit, I expected Clappers and XL to be the opposite ways round, but that was XL changing themselves essentially.
Yeah, and XL was the one team I really wanted to zoom in the most on, because obviously XL's ownership recently changed, and there's a concept of speculation that maybe they might, because their Australian owners XL might move into the OCE region for Rocket League. So it does kind of put the team's future at a bit of a crossroads and a bit of a weird spot, to be honest. What?
I just thought in my mind, suddenly we get a whole series of Marky Doodah down under. That'd be fantastic.
I mean, I don't know if he really wants to move to OC. I mean, certainly you can feel it.
If XL moved down to OC, like, just imagine taking the current team. They could probably come out in a decent spot. They might not win it because, I mean, just from looking at the previous one, Chiefs pretty nuts. Tainted Minds, I think, were hurt by their current transitions. That's because I think it was Kia moved up to Chiefs because Jake retired. That's a whole different region. That's a whole different day. But it's hard to sum up the rough difference. But XL, I'd imagine, would be a top 4, top 5 team in OCE.
Possibly.
Which shows the caliber.
Possibly, again, the idea of XL moving into OC that I think is an idea of taking up entirely new roster. I think that for XL in particular, their performance in the Gfinity Elite Series, this next and final season of the year, is going to be pretty key for, I think.
For them,
that's going to be what's really key for them, and also whether they can also qualify for RLRS next season. I think that might be another distinguishing factor to try and sway XL to keep them around.
Just on that 4, let's continue that. So if Gfinity, because the ownership moving down there, you would imagine XL go from the British Gfinity Elite Series, the EU one, down to the OCE one, wouldn't they? That's a natural
that's the point. That's the point as well. They actually have to buy the spot in the OCE Elite Series, and I don't know if XL have the money to do that right now, to be honest. Because
you can imagine deals though being made, because it's like, you'll move, like, they could do that as a marketing stunt. You've moved from one to the other. The ties there, and the like I said, the deals, the networking. It's understandable that they could do it. For me, though, it would be just an interesting one because, like we said, this season for XL, if they want to keep their spot in the EU, I reckon it comes down to the team doing it in Gfinity, not really worrying about the next RLRS season for qualifying, because I reckon that's too far down the line, because these deals will be made by January, which is, of course, before the qualifiers for the RLRS take place.
Yeah, so for XL, a lot of their future is still up in the air. For the other teams, however, XL is still a bit of a defined pathway for them going forward. But for the other teams, You got to imagine maybe there might be a bit of regret because there were a lot of signings coming through pre the season. You know, Nordavind picked up their team and they haven't really been able to stay in. So Copenhagen Flames,
So-
I guess Copenhagen Flames to a lesser extent because they have kind of, yeah, they are kind of a lower tier organization within the RL space.
Nordavind are happy because if you look at the rest of the Gfinity Elite Series teams, they picked up a very solid roster, and it's better than what they had last season. So really, Nordavind stepped it up. They're not, blowing out tons of money on it because it's an RLRS team, not an RLCS team. But again, no one in Gfinity Elite Series wants to put that money. The biggest team is Vitality, and no one can really compete on that same level as Vitality. And that was more down to Vitality trying to put in the marketing stunts. And they've got serious ties now with Gfinity purely because of the Elite Series as well as like the Formula One stuff. Vitality is a big FIFA team as well. So it made sense for them, and it's just them carrying over. Vitality could have picked up an academy team, and I wouldn't have expected less. So the fact that they're using the main roster, albeit with, I think it's Nexo, isn't it, instead of Scrubkiller, because Scrubkiller's 15, you've got to be 16 to play in the Gfinity Elite Series. For me, that's more good for the players and good for Vitality that they come in and they're just there like, yeah, we want to pub stomp the whole of the Gfinity Elite Series and come out on top. We want to be dominant, which is a good sign for Wargs.
All right then. Well, let's focus on the clappers real quick.
All right.
What's funny? You keep laughing every time I say something.
I just love how you just need to be like, okay, go.
I accept your point. I accept your point. I mean, it's fair enough. You know, I mean, I completely forgot that Nordavind were in the Gfinity Elite Series because last season they did fuck all anyway. You know,
say how it is.
I've never been anything less, my dude. But the only other team that were eliminated is the Clappers, and they're a team that are not a part of the organization. And unfortunately, they have decided to disband altogether as of October 13th. At least that's what Wikipedia says. Calix, Ocelon, and Petrick are no more. So I think Calix.
So on that one, just going to say, Calix and Ocelon are still together. They're playing under 3 cars in the Renegade Cup action. Like I said, because of how Renegade Cup is, they've got to stick together. They picked up Gary Gorlap, or Harry Horlap, or whatever they call him, Jerry Gorlap.
I call upon the jar of jam to explain to us how exactly we must say this name.
Dutch people, like, they're very normal in their English, and then suddenly they throw a curveball at us, and we don't get it. But yeah, Gary Gorlap, I was never pretty sure was at this level, but he's a nuts player as it is. So I was just going to say more of a community level, if that makes sense, where you play in your rewind or rival weeklies. Didn't expect him to get picked up by such an awesome lot. I thought Petrick was a nuts player, and rightfully for this team, I think they should have stayed together personally. Ghostfire was playing with some other dudes. I think he got knocked out, unfortunately. But he did make it to the top 32. I think that was under Pimpam, if I remember right. I'll quickly bring that up later. But yeah, they've gone their separate ways. And again, this is one which annoys me, Joe, because I've always said it. Teams need to stick together for longer than 4 months.
Yeah, I'm not really sure if he's part of 3 cars. I'm not even sure if he's part of 3 cars.
At the very end of August, maybe the start of September, before the qualifiers for, RLRS. So it's literally, let's say start of September. It's been less than 2 months they've been together. That is not a long enough period of time, personally.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you on that front, but that's the decision that they've made. Unfortunately, Rocket League kind of represents the UK scene in that regard, and I fucking hate the UK scene. But whatever. But I'm not even sure if Gary Gorlap is actually still, if that's an official team or just a mix, because according to Wikipedia, he's still on the Unique Stars roster, which have been around the place. I haven't really seen them since the
That's a separate case, because Unique Stars, if I remember, is Zedo Marpe, maybe? Unique Stars. Let me bring that up. Sweaty Mix. That's it. So again, that's more those lads. That was them playing in the weeklies and all of that for fun. Remember, Unique Stars also were the Blitzers, if I remember right, with Zedo and Steak. So don't take that as anything really to go by. It's one of those weird cases, essentially. Unique Stars will come back every 3 months in one tournament because they're just using the same old account, which they use the Gfinity sign up, essentially.
Well, Players are lazy. You are
You've
you
already
are
got
right
all
on
those
that
points
front.
saved up in the account. Just keep using it. It makes no sense making a new team if it's the same people.
Oh wow. Well, I mean, fair play to them. Yeah, well, that's pretty much the fate of the 4 teams at the moment, and
I
where
will
they're
say,
going to go.
I'm just going to say, Zedo gets picked up by a lot of small orgs. Like, just using Unique Star as an example, Fox Raid. Well done, dude. I don't know how you've got the connections to quickly get picked up by all these small orgs, but it's impressive at least, you know?
Yeah, credit to him. I mean, again, Zedo is kind of like a separate conversation for another day at this point. But yeah, at this point, I think we're done with the RLRS. Again, those of your final standings, Savage and Reverso going to the playoffs, Beth for the secret stay in. Any final thoughts on the RLCS before we move into the RLRS before we move into the RLCS?
Sad times that we've got to now wait 4 months until the next RLRS season. That's it.
Really that. That's like
Double
you
round
know,
one.
we've had our comedy. We've had our comedy with me impersonating the average Unilad audience member, and also with Jar of Jam's fantastic question. Now you're just hitting us with the fucking life truth, just like a fucking
the mad truth.
back to the gut, the kick to the balls, spaking with we gotta wait 4 more months right now for the RLRS. But do you know what we don't have to wait for? The RLCS promotions, and we didn't have to wait for the playoffs for that long either, because
No,
that's what happened this past gone week. This is a bit of a weird one, actually, because if I recall correctly, I think we pretty much predicted all except for one of these results going this way, and that one being the Flipside Tactics versus We Dem Girls result. We didn't get the predicted top 4.
No, we didn't.
Yeah. Yes, we did.
PSG did not predict to beat Vitality, misters. This was actually the complete flip reverse. No, I think when we were talking about it, I was like, Vitality 4-2 against PSG, and then Dignitas will 4-2 against PSG. I expect this to play out exactly how it was, apart from Vitality taking PSG's spot here. And, I mean, we can go on to it, but Vitality had a really naff day, didn't they? Like, you were a bit harsh about one player in particular.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Did we? I can't fuck it. Well, fuck it. Let's forget about the predictions. Obviously, we're not doing the Pick'em Challenge just yet, although that's a sneak peek for what's coming up later on during one of the future shows.
With some special boys joining us.
Yeah, with some special boys, some casty boys, potentially. I'm not going to go any more into that. But I was really disappointed with Fairy Peak in this series. His rotations looked god-awful. Like god fucking awful. Like we've seen on Reddit the meme, the Twitch clip from Shogun's Twitch when he was streaming with Cole and Stumpy and sort of talking about the match there, and they were fucking cringing and screaming at Fairy Peak like, why would you rotate? Why would you touch that ball when it's open for a shot? And it's just like, oh my god, Fairy Peak actually looks really bad during this one. And this isn't the first time we've seen this. A few weeks ago during one of the matches, he also looked like the weak link as part of Vitality, and it's such a really weird thing, because last season he was one of the standout players for Vitality, and right now he's just absolutely not. That's absolutely not the case.
So yeah, the problem here is Fairy Peak this season. The introduction of Scrub Killer didn't. It seems to be one that's got ups and downs. It's a really inconsistent team, which is a problem, since when they had Freaky, it was quite consistent as a team. Not the best team, but quite consistent. Dignitas, I think it was Turbo, before the playoffs, said that the 2 teams they were worried about, like the 2 teams they thought could beat them, was Vitality and Weed and Gales. They've knocked out one of the teams they think can beat them at LAN. Because they, again, talked down saying NA has, dropped off this year. NRG were good last season, but they've sort of dropped off, and that's the only team they worry about just because of playstyles. Yeah, Vitality not showing up on the day. PSG did show up yesterday, though, didn't they? They showed up in spades. Apart from that 3rd, 4th place game where it just seems like they gave up. I said it before. It seems like they got out the Euros, had a cup of tea, and sat there dunking biscuits while playing.
Yeah, I think PSG's main focus is the LAN at the moment. Like, although they did take 2 games away from Dignitas, again, it didn't look 100% amazing against Flipside.
It didn't look 100% amazing. Those first 2 games, you're there going, oh damn, PSG could sweep Dignitas. Everyone was thinking it.
PSG I didn't really watch much of that series. I didn't really watch much of that series. I was fucking traveling home from LAN at the time. Fucking casual, yeah, that's me. But you know, as you say, the third place matchup, I don't really think PSG gave that much of a damn because they came up top 4, so they got to the LAN anyways. That does mean that Flipside are going to be taking the third place position again, as expected. This is the top 4 that Weedham Girls, Dignitas, PSG, and Flipside are going to be going through to the LAN finals. Obviously, no surprises there. Those were the top teams for a while. Those were the expected results that we went into going into that last week of replay.
Yeah, again, PSG being the only sort of unexpected thing there. Everyone thought Mouse Esports were going to lose to Weedham Girls. Weedham Girls,
and unfortunately, they got
arguably,
absolutely shit on.
It's just how it is. Mouse Sports, new to the league, they're still in RLCS next season, and I reckon they're going to make the biggest improvements next season. I still believe in the Mouse Sports roster. I think they're going to be nuts next season because now they've got, like we said, 4-5 months to make that improvement. There'll probably be 1, maybe 2 off-season tournaments for them to play in. The future's bright for them, Jay.
Yeah, any particular roster changes you think might need to be made? Because I'm going to start off the bat. Obviously, I've criticised Fairy Peak a little bit today. I'm going to say that I think his time in RLCS might end up being done here. Like, it wouldn't surprise me at all if that's those changes that Rena Vitality decide to make. For me, Pashu's a bit up and down, but generally tends to be more up than down. But he doesn't really make any major mistakes compared to what Fairy Peak's been doing, especially in that
an anchor player. So he's the foundation, the core of the team, essentially. So he doesn't do anything fancy. Whatever he does sort of doesn't make any mishaps happen. He's just there. He's a captain and he directs his team. So he plays a very solid role. So I don't think it's his spot. Like you said, it's got to be Fairy Peak for that team. I'm actually, in a way, expecting, and I don't know why, but I think you could see Cooks join that side. I'm just saying it now. I don't want to see Cooks leave Flipside, but could you imagine that roster? Just saying that because it's a very
I'm going to be honest. I can't imagine that roster because I can't see Cooks going off.
Absolutely be a god in attack. He had to play very defensive for this season, but we know Scrub loves just getting up into the grill of his opponents. That would work. Otherwise, Tigre, I could see moving from Mouse Sports and doing a like for that because, you know, Fairy Peak's an RLCS player through and through, and that would make most sense of which team to go to.
I really hope that doesn't happen. I hope it doesn't happen just because I think Mouse Sports has a lot of potential, and again, we saw flashes of that potential in the early part of the series.
Or Alpha. Coming up from Savage, by far the best player on Savage. I could see him taking that spot.
You know, because obviously Alpha's been fucking incredible this season in the RLRS, you know, just the way that he's been playing. It was sort of like a nobody when we first saw him, and I thought looking at his roster, like, it's 2 parts good and then there's Alpha. But Alpha just, like, shutting everybody up. He is insane. That could be a hell of a pickup for the RLCS. Do you know what? That's a prospect that actually really excites me. So, Scrub, if you're watching.
Scrub's safe. I'm kidding, I have no worries.
No, Scrub is very, very safe. Scrub is very, very safe. You know, like even back when Vitality were in the early part of the season and they weren't looking very, very good, he was pulling off miracles in that goal. Like he is insane. Like there's absolutely no doubt about it.
Season. He has been the defensive brick for Vitality, and Vitality always play as if they do need a major defensive player. Last season as Freaky, this season being Scrub. Like I said, you could bring in a brand new defensive player. Danny in chat suggesting Freaky. I don't expect him to come back because it's sort of a case of those bridges are burnt. Don't get me wrong, it was mainly with Fairy Peak, but I don't see Pashi bringing him back into the roster, essentially. Because you don't do that unless it's been a significant amount of time, like 2 years.
Yeah, because the key thing about that as well is that if Freaky was kicked off the team, then that means that Fairy Peak and Pashi had to agree to that prospect. You know, so I don't see Pashi going back on that.
And that's why I don't think Pashi's going to be the one off Vitality because he's the captain. I think he's got the main sort of control over it, and he'll go, Scrub, you did well. Fairy Peak could be an inconsistency. So if there is a change to the roster, it won't happen for a few months because they'll go, okay, let's try and fix this. And if they can't fix it, they'll make the change. I think it's just they need more time because what we saw in the very last week of League Play was Vitality absolutely popped off. Dignitas, like I said, were worried about Vitality. So there's potential for greatness, but inconsistency is what really kills a team.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I prefer to see no roster swaps, because you can't gain consistency if you're constantly chopping and changing parts.
Exactly. Like I was saying with mouse sports, their potential, they've got to stick together. They cannot go swapping their players, I reckon, during this off
Absolutely,
season.
yeah. I want to see all of them
Flip
stick
side
together.
of the big proof of sticking together as well. It's taken a while, but Mystic, Yuko, and Cooks here have been playing great. Last season, Cooks here was near enough the only one showing up on that team, it felt like. No, this season, they've all put the work in, and the trio are looking good. I'm expecting a couple of upsets from them at LAN. I reckon, unfortunately, it's going to be PSG that might struggle in that environment, but I hope that's wrong. I hope that the top four at LAN turn out to be EU, because not biased at all.
I yeah,
There's always that little
nah.
bit there where you're like, oh yeah, that'd be so cool.
Well, EU deserve all the spots, so fuck it. Let's just have an all EU RLCS LAN. Why not? Let's move on to our final point then, because you are a little bit worried about Dignitas. Dignitas have obviously looked stellar this season. During league play, they only ended up dropping 4 games. In this playoff, they only ended up dropping 2 to PSG, who obviously had a pop off anyway. Why are you worried about Dignitas, to be honest? Because I think I know that you put in the show, and you should put in the show plan. They've been unchallenged for too long, and I know it's a bit of a meme on Reddit. Someone put up about the fucking. About how they've saved all their losses for the World Championship. But I think the difference between Dignitas and this one is just that they are playing such a perfect style of Rocket League. That's why I don't really agree that there's any real worry about them being able to take the title again.
So Dignitas's last loss on a competitive scene, anyway, was against Fnatic back in the Coliseum at the end of August. Actually, I think that game took place on the 1st of September. Funny enough, so that is a month and a half without a team going with a competitive loss. Now we all talk about this Dignitas dynasty essentially, but for me, I was sort of hoping Dignitas will come out as second seed of this, because I think for them to grow continuously, because it feels at the moment throughout this season, Dignitas have not improved. They just stayed at that same awesome level. Don't get me wrong, that's a bloody high level. But I'm personally someone that believes in from defeat, you learn and improve. And this is why coming into this into LAN, I'm worried for Dignitas could come in that first seed and sort of, I wouldn't say be too confident, because that's not the lads, but not being challenged for such a long period of time could make it quite difficult for them.
I think that being unchallenged like that for such a large period of time only weakens them in the long term, in my opinion. I do agree. The idea of having a loss means that you've got a lot to improve, but for the time being, they are just still the best team out of everybody. I can't really see them.
I will say those first 2 games going to PSG is good in my account, for this same reason of they'll look back over the VODs and go, right, why were
that's
we
the thing.
not
That's the
ready
thing.
at the start? Because Dignitas's loss have always been at the very start of series, and so that is the one key thing they need to work on, is starting off games right. Because so far this league play, it was Mouse that took the first game off them. I think Vitality took the first 2 games off them as well back in league play. Dignitas need to start off series right. I know at LAN it's all best of 7s, but it's at such a different level, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's the thing about Dignitas, they'll always look at those individual games. Turbo Pulsar is the kind of guy who was always like, yeah, I want to get better, I want to improve. Even when he won his first world title with Northern Gaming, he always went to the second roster and was like, right, we're going to make this into something better. And even then, that wasn't enough. Champion's Curse, he's evaded Champion's Curse so well, being a part of the Dignitas side. And that's because, twice he's avoided Champion's Curse. And that's because he's always striving to improve. It doesn't matter what he's like. The Turbo Pulsar in this season is so different to the Turbo we saw in season 3. And that's the key thing about it, is that he is one of those star talents. He's like, he is the faker of Rocket League, because working hard and getting a world title is not enough. You got to get the next one, and the one after that, and the one after that. You got to get to a point where you are the fucking greatest of all time. And certainly he's a runner for the greatest of all time in my books right now. And I don't think this is going to be the end of Dignitas. Certainly, it might start to end up becoming a situation where they're just so powerful that the one team that comes and knocks them off that pedestal is the one that destroys the entire fucking team. But I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Again, I think it's going to be at LAN, and it'll be a case of Dignitas coming second in the end or something like that. we all know Dignitas last LAN went down into the lower bracket as well, getting knocked down by NRG if I'm right, and then having to come back through.
No, it wasn't.
Up against.
Hold on.
I
Pretty
swear
sure that
NRG
wasn't the
dropped
case.
it down last season.
Because
NRG
no,
went through the
NRG.
top. NRG went through the top. Pretty sure.
Oh, you're right. Actually, yeah, they did 3-1. Sorry, I completely forgot because I thought it was NRG that got the bracket reset. My mistake.
No, that's why it was so intense, because Dignitas won the first bracket 4-2, if I'm right, and then it was a 4-3 right at the end.
Yeah, that's about right. That's
big brain on bacon today. Yay!
This man knows what's up. But no, I don't think it's a major problem. I still think Dignitas should be able to come back even if they are dropped to that lower bracket. Obviously, we'll see when the timeline comes, and this will all be stuff we take into account when we do our special pick and predictions before the LAN actually begins. But more information on that coming up as the weeks roll on. Might even get a couple of guests on. Again, all secrets to be wrapped up that we will reveal as time goes on. But for the time being, that's it. We're done for the week. We've gone through the news. We've gone through the potentials. We've gone through our predictions and things and stuff. So
and we're on time.
And we're on time. Yeah, we didn't even have a feature this week. We still managed to fill a half an hour. So, yes, there we go. That's fantastic. Once again, I want to thank you all for joining us here. If you've been watching live, of course, last chance to get involved by following the Twitch channel and checking out the Twitter at RLAfterShock, ! Discord in the chat if you want to be involved in that. All the links are also being linked in the show notes of here. If you are interested in taking the podcast with you, again, if you're watching the video version on YouTube, we are now available on Spotify and Google Podcasts, among other smaller platforms. So make sure you go ahead and check that out on anchor.fm/RLAfterShock if you want to get your information on where you can listen to and what apps are available in. Next week we'll be back with probably a little bit more of a shorter show, I believe, because we literally only have the Grand Prix to take a look at by that point, because maybe the promotion tournament. We can have the promotion tournament as well.
Gfinity predictions, maybe, because hopefully by next week we should know if Unilad's in or not and have full coverage of the teams.
We could do that.
I think that's still due to start on the 27th. I can't remember. I think that starts at the end of this month, or maybe not. Do we have a starting date?
I think we do have a starting date. It starts, according to Wikipedia, it does start on the 27th. You're right. So it begins in a little over a week's time from a little under a week's time from our start. So we'll take a look at the Gfinity Elite Series, I think, next week, and of course the promotion playoffs and the Rocket Baguette Grand Prix. So make sure you join us once again at the same time, 5 p.m. BST. Are we supposed to go with the GMT by that point, or is that end of the month?
I thought that was the 28th. Let me see. When does BST?
Well, BST or GMT, whenever we come to do that. Obviously, that'll come up on Mondays as usual for the Twitch page, as the VODs and podcast versions will be out later tonight. So make sure you stick around for that. Bacon, any last thoughts?
Cookies are tasty.
Do you know what's tasty?
No.
Dinner, and I'm about to go get some. So once again, thank you all very much for watching. We'll see you next week for more from RLAfterShock.